I talked about in the very beginning that you had this raid and that in your neighborhood with your family, and there's a picture of you coming out of your house with your shorts on, t-shirt, and all of a sudden your life is under siege. Did you have any idea that that was gonna
I had no earthly. I got a phone call from my wife. She was traveling with two of our children. She said, Ryan, someone has called my phone over and over again. He says that he's an FBI agent and he is coming to arrest you. There's no way. Like, what?
What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? So who are we talking to today at Nightmare Success? Well, we've got our own Ryan Bloom, and I'm going to tell you, Ryan and I are fellow people on the White Collar Support Group, and he actually spoke to the White Collar Support Group not this Monday, but the Monday before, and we had a conversation about a week or so ago. Ryan, as everyone knows who comes to this podcast, I hear a lot of stories. I've never heard a story like this one. This story is, I mean, every person that ever gets federally convicted or indicted is looking for all charges dismissed. All charges dismissed. That's what happened to Ryan. But before that, he lived through an 18-month ordeal, a nightmare with the DOJ that opened with a shocking front yard gunpoint arrest. And then it ended 18 months later with the dismissal of all charges. This case has it all. It's also something you never see or hear. You had a disqualification of an assistant U.S. attorney. That hardly ever happens. I bet it's less than 1% of any percentage of what you can get to. Um, the other thing that just got me about this story is that Ryan was, I mean, when you have federal charges and the USA is versus your name, you're up against the wall like you've never felt in your life. But man, the courage that he showed, he said he didn't feel courageous. I felt like when he told me this story, you couldn't have gone through this without unbelievable courage. And he researched like someone, like your life depends on it, which you should. And we're going to talk about all that. But he got the right attorney, and these guys wanted to fight. They knew that they had a case that should be fought, and Ryan did the work to get the ones in his corner to make it happen. I can't wait to jump into all this. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car, and then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and finance. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Folks, I want to share with you a powerful and moving new book you won't want to miss. My Name is Saffron. Voices, silenced, stifled, and taken away by author Saffron Gustafson. This isn't just a story. It's a journey through resilience, survival, and reclaiming your voice after being silenced for far too long. Saffron's story takes you inside the hidden struggles, the pain, and ultimately the triumph of refusing to be defined by circumstances. As Saffron was putting the finishing touches on her book, the prison she had just been released from, Federal Dublin FCI, was permanently closed because of sexual abuse of the women prisoners. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rise from the darkness of places, to find your truth, and to speak it boldly, this book will inspire you. Pick up your copy of My Name is Saffron today, available now on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Trust me, you'll be moved, challenged, and changed by her story. Ryan Bloom, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Brent, I'm doing well and excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And I've been excited ever since I have heard this story because This is one of those stories, it's just a feel-good story. Yeah, did you financially get whipped upside the head? Absolutely, but usually you get whipped upside the head and go to prison. So, this is a whipped upside the head and you walk out with a victory, and I just how are you feeling? Because this is something that just happened weeks ago.
It's wild because we knew that the case was going to be dismissed back in November, but we couldn't talk about it. And so that was its whole own dynamic. And I thought that after I found out the case was going to be dismissed, I thought I'd feel relieved. I'd feel just this weight lifted.
Yeah,
I might feel happy. I might feel sad. I didn't know what. I didn't feel anything. I
you were
just felt
numb from the
completely
experience.
numb. I mean, it was, I felt like I felt like a zombie. And it was just almost like that 18 months of wait left me with just nothing left
Well,
emotionally to give. It was so weird. It was so weird for a couple of weeks.
well, and I think what that too is that you were running on adrenaline, like you were sprinting through a marathon, and then all of a sudden they say it's over. You didn't even know where the finish line was, and there you are. Well, let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
You're an Oklahoma guy. Have you always been in Oklahoma?
Yeah, born and raised in Yukon. That's the western suburb of Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
Went to school up at Oklahoma State, moved back
cowboy.
here. I have a wife, raising kids here, live fairly close to both of our folks, and just kind of an Oklahoma guy through and through.
How many? So you got mom, dad. You have siblings?
Yeah, so I have one sister,
Okay, one
and she's
sister.
she's married with kids that are my kids' age, very tight-knit family.
That's great. So just a good Oklahoma, and you've got I think 4 kids and a wife, and
Yeah,
this.
so I married my first girlfriend. We've been together, I mean, we've been, for 21 years now, and just felt like we grew up together, like, married, kid, just we've just been through every stage, every bit of our lives. It just feels like we've been together and just been together through all of it.
I think that really means something because you and I don't know, you don't know this, but what you just said, my wife, I met when she was 13, I was 15. And, we've gone through every single life stage together. And so when our nightmare landed on us, it was just incredible on how she just grabbed hold and was such a great role model and rock for our girls. And, you know, you don't you don't ever expect a nightmare, and you never want your spouse to go through something like that, but man, it really whatever you hit bonds you have, it really tightens them up, or it breaks it off. There's 2 ways, I guess, to go with it, but so, Ryan, um, I mean, you're a younger guy, but you were having success. Can you kinda walk us through, uh, how you got started in your business and then when this we'll kinda step through, the process of how this happened.
Sure. So, I'd worked in oil and gas construction, specifically in kind of the electrical and power delivery. The oil and gas industry is huge in this state.
Yeah.
And I'd worked on the kind of service side, and then I'd also worked for a couple of the bigger energy companies here in the city. And we were in a pretty hard bust cycle for the industry. And someone who'd worked with me before came to me and said, Ryan, I've got this incredible opportunity. Google Fiber is coming to Oklahoma City, and we need to get out in front of it. And we need to start an underground utility company because there's just going to be this incredible amount of work right here in our front yard. We never laid a foot of Google Fiber. That opportunity they ended up canceling that.
It never came about.
It never
Okay.
came. But we, over a span of about 7 years, or 6 years, with this business partner, we just built it up from nothing, and hired employees and bought equipment and grew the business. And
So it
I
was a
was
construction business, basically.
yeah, it was a utility construction
Yeah.
business, and in the aftermath of everything, it just, kind of adding it up, and it struck me, that we had done $60 million worth of sales in our entire time in business. We'd paid out about $30 million in wages over that time period. And when I went bankrupt and when it all fell apart, like, the only comfort I had was I just thought about $30 million worth of employees' rent, birthday parties.
Yeah.
I felt like that was the lasting legacy of this company that eventually failed. Was just, it meant a lot to the employees and to the customers for that period of time, until it didn't.
Yeah, it changes people's lives. It's one of the things that, is not talked about a lot is when, something goes through with a federal investigation and the company goes through that process with, indictments and things. It destroys the business, but it absolutely changes people's lives forever that did nothing but just work and were loyal and were a part of something that was their livelihood. Sometimes it's hundreds, sometimes it's thousands of people that are affected by that. It's just, um, it's something that's always stayed with me because it was what I went through and what my family went through was horrible. But the people that were just coming to work every day didn't really know anything that was happening except that they were doing a good job. They had to go out and find another job. And
Sure.
it's a, so
Yeah, and kind of my story was that the business had failed and gone through bankruptcy, and everyone had kind of moved on. I thought I'd moved on, and then that's when the nightmare. That's when things went from bad to worse.
yeah, bad to worse. So, and I think from remembering talking about how, so you had a relationship with this bank and the bank for an easier way to talk about it was is they were factoring or buying your receivables, which was basically collateralizing your business loan to be able to, whether it was a line of credit or whatever the case might have been, you had a relationship with the bank in that capacity.
Yeah, and it was actually bigger than that. So we had this bank that loaned us money on everything. They loaned us money for equipment. They had, a lien on all of our property. This bank really was, largely kind of the capital cornerstone for this business. And then among those things, they purchased accounts from us. The really it was that entire program that really ended up serving as, the basis for the entire, criminal nightmare was around this, basically. And they were very careful not to call it factoring. They never used the word factoring, but was around this program called Business Manager. And it was supposed to provide working capital for the business. And that's how they marketed it. That's how we used it. And really only after the company was, dead and gone, did they turn around and weaponize that and accuse me of abusing that program to the level of committing felony bank fraud.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really dark quickly. So and you later find out the reason why they're turning this screw on you and tightening it is because they have insurance and they're thinking if they can turn this the way they want it, then they'll be funded and all will be good and you will be gone and everything they do just goes forward. So I talked about in the very beginning that you had this raid and that in your neighborhood with your family, and there's a picture of you coming out of your house with your shorts on, t-shirt, and all of a sudden your life is under siege. Did you have any idea that that was going to happen?
I had no earthly idea. I got a phone call from my wife. She was traveling with two of our children. She said, "Ryan, someone has called my phone over and over again. He says that he's an FBI agent and he is coming to arrest you." And I just, there's no way. There's no like, what?
Had anything been going on before this point? In the sense
In
that, contacted by the FBI,
no,
contacted nothing? Okay.
no. So I have not heard a word of anything. I've not had anybody, confide in me that they've been like there were absolutely no indications whatsoever. And I called this phone number that I realized I had missed calls from this number. And I I said, "Who is this? What's going on?" And this guy says, "I'm Special Agent Ben Busick with the FBI. I have a warrant for your arrest. I'm posted outside your neighborhood. You need to come out of your house with your hands in the air." And I said, "What? How many iTunes gift cards do you need me to go get? This has to be a scam." And he said, "It's not a scam. You'll know when you look outside your window." And I look outside. I mean, I just like pull the curtain back. And here are 3 silver sedans and 6 FBI agents in their navy blue jackets with the yellow lettering on them. And I'm in shock. And what I'll never, ever, ever get over is my 9-year-old son was with me alone. And I looked at him and he'd kind of heard all this play out. And he thought it was a big practical joke, and he had the biggest smile on his face. He just was like, "What on earth? This is going to be hilarious. This isn't even real.
Yeah.
Someone's playing a
One big
joke or
prank.
something."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget him smiling. It's me.
So you go outside the house. What happens next?
So Agent Busick had told me to come outside with shoes, and I had called an attorney friend and said, "Hey, what the heck?" And he's like, "I don't know what to tell you. Check for a warrant, check their badges, make sure you're not being kidnapped." And in all of this, I came out with my shoes in my hand because he'd said to come out with shoes, and my brain didn't process to put the shoes
Put the
on.
shoes on, right?
And so, and when I step out, I mean, they're like, like in a defensive position. And so I get my shoes on and they scream at me to put my hands in the air, put your hands behind your back. And I mean, just in an instant, I'm cuffed, spun around, and I'm headed for the car. And I said, my son's in there. My son is in there. And they're like, "Oh, really? Huh. All right. Do you have anybody you can call?" And I said, "Yes. Can I please call my dad?" And he had told me not to bring a phone. I didn't have anything with me other than my shoes in my hand. And luckily, my dad is one of the last people in America that still answers every phone call that's placed to his cell phone. And so he answered, and I said, "Dad, it's Ryan. I'm not kidding. The FBI is arresting me. I have no idea why. Our son is here alone. Can you please come?" And he's like, "I'm on my way." And they wouldn't let me go tell my son what was happening. They wouldn't let me wait. They just put me in the back of the FBI Ford sedan, sat me down on the cuffs, which was very unenjoyable,
Yeah.
and drove off.
With your 9-year-old son in there?
So he's inside and watching through the window, and then he just went and hid. And he's very resourceful and smart. Don't know where he got it from, but he got his iPad out and he was trying to track me because he thought, well, I could figure out where dad's at using Find My. And obviously he didn't know. I didn't have anything with me. And he's trembling and he's shaking because my dad comes into the house and, he hears the door open and he has no idea that it's safety. And so my dad scoops him up and takes him home. And to this day, he won't talk about it.
Wow. How traumatic, for a 9-year-old. I mean, it's traumatic for a 50-year-old. I mean, and as you know, Ryan, as you've gone through this, it's random. They don't have to do that. That didn't happen to me. Now, it happened to somebody else that was in our case. I don't know why. Nobody knows why. They just decide that they're going to do it that way and they don't do it to others. But what they do is absolutely everyone is totally affected by it. It's scary. It's guns. It's the FBI. It's law enforcement raiding something that's your personal property, and then to have that type of situation with the son that's there to see all this is just heart wrenching. especially when you find out in the end that this was not supposed to have been done because this was a stupid case. But so they take you in this car. What are the next hours like for you?
So I ask him, what on earth is this about? And he just says, this has to do with your company and Valiance Bank. And I said, okay. And he's like, do you want to talk? I was like, I think I've seen enough cop
Yeah,
shows that
don't
I'm
talk.
not supposed to. So we're driving and I'm sitting on these cuffs. And I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to lose a hand. And I said, and they pulled over because they wanted to get their vests off because, they had their bulletproof vests on and it's, July in Oklahoma. So they take their vests off. And I said, hey, is there any way we could kind of readjust these handcuffs? He's like, yeah, if you want to talk. I was like, at this point, I'm like, I will do anything to not be sitting on my cuffed wrists. So I sign away my Miranda rights and he proceeds to ask me questions and he proceeds to tell me that I never did a project in Omaha or a project in Lincoln and just starts rattling off these very specific projects that my company did.
Right, that you know for sure because you were actually part of that and have pictures and everything else that rolls
Yes, and
into it.
receipts,
Yeah.
and just starts telling me that I've lived in a made-up fairy tale world for the last period of my life, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Who could I talk to that would verify all this?" And I mean, I'm giving him witnesses. I mean, and he's taking notes. And then according to my attorneys, I start interviewing him. I start questioning him. I start asking him, did you look at this? Did you see this? Just they're like, we've never seen someone in an in custody interview to begin interrogating the agent, but you did. And finally he was frustrated. He just was like, listen, if you're going to keep this up, we're just going to take you downtown. So they take me to get arraigned. And I mean, I get processed at the marshals. They swab my cheek for DNA. They take fingerprints. I'm held there all day. They appoint a public defender because I didn't have an attorney to represent me. And later that afternoon, they cuff my wrists to my waist to a chain down to my ankles, and I waddle into court and plead not guilty. And the prosecutor doesn't oppose me being released the same day on a $5,000 bond. And there's my dad out in the crowd and just this totally emotional moment where I get uncuffed 20 feet in front of my dad. And I mean, and I'm just sobbing at this point. I mean, I'm just so overwhelmed. I just can't even believe what's happened.
Wow. So you get released. I'm trying to remember the part of your story, Ryan. What you had the public defender. Did you make the change then or did you do it later down the road?
Well, no. So we got a recommendation for,
Well, then the other thing was I was going to ask you. So they read out these charges that you're guilty of. What were you thinking when that happened?
So this public defender had showed me the U.S. sentencing guidelines, whispered them to me because she says, hey, in 5 minutes, that judge is going to tell you that you're facing 30 years in prison. And I just want to show you what you're actually facing. And she's like, look, you're only facing 5 years. And I was like, that is not the comfort that you probably think it is.
That's the good news of
That's
the day.
the good news. And so I mean, I'm just, it's a blur because again, like you're in this courthouse and they don't tell you where you're going. You're just walking down the hall with other guys in orange jumpsuits. I'm still wearing my shorts and t-shirt. And then all of a sudden you're just thrust into this massive courtroom. There's, and you're just, I mean, it's just sensory overload.
Well, yeah, it's sensory overload, and you're just basically taken off the street from your house, and all of a sudden you're shackled in front of a judge.
Yeah,
How
and
does
so to
it?
answer your
Yeah,
question, out in the lobby, I'm introduced to the best criminal attorneys in Oklahoma City, and that's a title to this day I would say the same thing. And they said, hey, listen, we're going to be your team, and we're going to enter an appearance, and hey, we've talked to the prosecutor. This must have been building for months. They only charge folks after a long, thorough investigation, and we're going to have the files Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest, and we'll have a clue what we're looking at here. But hey, this has been building for a long time, under the scenes, behind the scenes. One of them wanted to know why I ignored the target letter. And he didn't believe me. Not didn't believe me. He was very skeptical that I would just be plucked out of my front yard like that as a, family man with community ties, no violent, no history whatsoever. He's like, that's unusual. I don't know why you didn't get a target letter, but he said to me, you pissed off the wrong person is all I can tell you. You pissed off the wrong person.
Okay, that's fantastic advice. That's so how does this proceed?
Well, so it takes a couple of months. It takes a month before we get any evidence because they had to go
And are you
investigate.
working at this time in this couple of months? What are you doing?
So here's what's wild. I go home. I think the world has ended. I can't control the story with my kids. They took that away from me. So I didn't get to be the one to tell the kids what was going on or control the narrative at all with my.
Does this hit the news?
Yeah. So there's a press release that I find when I'm driving home. And then the hurt gets amplified because major news outlets didn't pick it up, but the rumor mill did. And so just the link to this justice.gov press release spreads like wildfire.
You know what I think's funny? Not funny, it's awful, is that people talk about that they don't ever believe the news. There's this thing about not believing, mainstream media or anything, they don't believe the news. But they automatically, when they see a justice press release, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, there's this total faith in it. And these are people, this is shared rampantly by people who claim to be your friend, claim to follow, a certain moral and ethical code. But in reality, this was just, this whole weekend, it's just spreading and it's getting shared like wildfire and everybody's getting reached out to about it. My parents, people are texting my wife, hey, how's life? Like, that's weird. Why have 3 people ask me how life is this one weekend that we're just processing this? And so it just kind of becomes this worst kept secret that I couldn't control. I was rarely ever the first person that got to, that would be able to tell friends and family what was going on because this press release has just gained a life of its own.
So,
yeah, you asked me about working. Sorry, I answered another question.
That's what I was going to go back to because you were living in this terrible upheaval, but you were working.
Yeah, so I had started a new job a month prior, and I emailed the owners of my company and told them what had happened and just prepared to lose my career over it. They'd hired me to start a department of their company, and I thought there's no way they're going to want anybody hanging around that has anything like this going on. So I sent it off and just prepared for the shoe to drop.
The shoe drop?
I got asked to join a phone call with all the leaders and owners of the company. And it's a big company. It's a very influential company. And I told them everything I knew at that point. I just laid it all out there. And they said, we got to take this under advisement and we'll get back with you. And so the CEO called me a few hours later and said, hey, listen, we believe in innocent until proven guilty. We believe that innocent people can be targeted by the justice system for unjust reasons, and go build this thing and we'll be in touch and we're going to put some folks around you to make sure that you succeed and we succeed and this whole thing succeeds.
Wow.
Keep us
Good for
updated
them.
and we're behind.
I mean,
You have no
that's
idea.
fantastic.
Like, you have no idea. Like, that change, like, that was the biggest.
That's a game changer.
Absolute game changer for the kids, for my wife, because, no job, no house, no food on the, you just can imagine how it would have all just spiraled.
Yep. Game
just
changer.
absolutely spiraled without their support. I mean,
Yeah.
just lifelong loyalty from me, just lifelong loyalty. I mean, it's just incredibly principled for a business owner in
Take
another
the risk.
state
They're taking
to
a
take the
risk.
risk
Yeah.
and say, we believe in you, but I promise you, I will return on their risk 1,000-fold for them. If that's the last thing I do on this earth,
Oh, man.
I will.
And you
I will.
remember, when you go through these things, Ryan, man, it's branded on you to remember the people that stuck with you because you feel it. You feel it to your bones. I want to take a break here because I want to talk about when we get back how you started stepping through this and how you started taking control of your own reins, not knowing anything. You've never been indicted. I want you to walk us through how you tackled this and ended up coming out on the other side. A lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation on Google. Well, there's hope. It's called the Discoverability Company that can help you. Whether you're building your reputation from scratch or you're repairing search results after a negative news story, Discoverability can also help you how you portray it on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co. It's not .com, it's .co. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off with coupon code Nightmare Success. And the Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group. That's where Ryan and I reside, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I tell you, this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. So, what I want to talk about, Ryan, is a lot of people get scared into paralysis when this happens because most people have been business people. And we're talking about this type of situation where they've been business people, they've been in control of things, they're directing growth and so on, but they've never experienced this, never thought they would ever experience this. How did you start strategizing and figuring things out to get to the result that you got to? Walk us through it.
Well, yeah. So when I told my attorneys that I had a factual basis and a factual rationale for every single transaction that my company had done, they said, that's great. Organize all that. And so I just spent dozens, hundreds of hours pulling in documents to underpin every single, bar none, every single transaction that we had done. And in the meantime, after several weeks, we got the first of the FBI investigations sent to us and figured out that the FBI had interviewed three witnesses interviewed three witnesses the week before the sealed grand jury indictment. And that was it. That was the investigation that had been done. And so then they went and started interviewing folks who had all seen the press release, who all had a narrative to align to. And they just start getting out there interviewing anybody with a pulse that had ever had a negative interaction with me.
Yeah, and I always think that's interesting how that works that way is that, you get this talking indictment and then they create, these people that are scared to death, start talking to them, but they're scared to death. If they don't say what they're supposed to say, the way they're supposed to say it, then they could get tagged into this thing. Most people call that witness tampering because when somebody from the defense side tries to go out and clarify or prove up their case, that's called witness tampering, which, by the way, they charged you with that.
Eventually, yes. I did eventually pick up one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, it's interesting in the justice system, we're very concerned about, tainting the jury pool.
Right.
Worried about jurors. Are we going to have jurors that come into this with
a clear
biases
mind
or whatever? But there's no concern about biasing witnesses, and the Department of Justice can put out a narrative, and it's a cheat sheet, if you will, for any would-be witness of, this is what you're here to help me support proving, and the extent to which you align to this will have direct benefits to you in terms of whether you're able to stay out of this or not.
Exactly. You said that really well.
Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And it's wild too, because in almost every 302 we're reading, the agent asks the person they're interviewing to give their opinion on my guilt. And it's wild because, he's asking a disgruntled family member from 10 years ago. And it's like, disgruntled family member believes Ryan committed this crime. Disgruntled former employee that has no information about what's going on presently believes Ryan is guilty. And it's just weird. Like how awkward is that to get to the end of this thing and say, hey, I know you have no facts whatsoever that pertain to the charges at hand. Just want someone's advice. You think that guy's guilty?
Yeah. So what's your
Bizarre. It's
opinion?
just bizarre.
Yeah. So, Ryan, you've got a whole bunch of interconnected web of things that happens. When do you find this out about the bank president, the Oklahoma president, the FBI? Why? When does that come into your world?
Yeah, so we start getting all this evidence in, and there's just a lot of kind of just wild connections, that surface. This one I've never figured out how I think this is just coincidental, but I find out that one of my kids, her best friend is closely related to this FBI agent. And I want you to imagine how weird it is for your child to tell you that they were at a family event and met the FBI agent that's coming after you.
Yeah.
That's a weird deal. So that one was very strange. But the biggest one that came to light is, I start looking at these names, and this prosecutor, Assistant United States Attorney D.H. Dilbeck, again, his name is on the press release that he chose to put out. So, I have friends and folks reaching out to me, and they're like, hey, we know D.H. Dilbeck. This is wild. You guys are the same age. He goes to your church. He goes to a different congregation of your church. And I'm researching him. And I compare on Valiance Bank's website. Here's a board of directors, and prominently listed as, one of the shareholders, founders. This is a guy with a profit and loss interest in this bank, is Joseph Harris Jr. Well, Joseph Harris Jr. is also the president of the University of Oklahoma. Okay, that's a big place. D.H. Dilbeck's wife, Mackenzie Dilbeck, also works for the same massive university. And that wouldn't be weird other than she's worked there for 10 years. And for the majority of those 10 years, she has directly reported to Joe Harris Jr. And when she starts at OU, this is all public record, she's making $50,000 a year. And now she's making $310,000 a year. And while I'm not saying, don't know, I can't opine whether those raises were merited or not, what I can say is that if there was somebody who had been instrumental in my wife or me personally going from $50,000 to $310,000 a year over a very short period of time, I would have a significant loyalty. My judgment would be clouded by how influential that person had been, particularly when I find quotes where Joe Harris Jr. is praising Mackenzie Dilbeck, praising her work, nominating her for these roles in these positions. And Joe Harris wears this other hat where he is a profit and loss owner, director, founder of a bank, and Mackenzie's husband, D.H., is prosecuting me. It just
That's
stunk.
incredible.
It just stunk.
When you told me that, there's nothing that smells good about that.
It smelled awful. It smelled awful.
So when you uncover all this and connect all these dots, what is the response from your attorneys with this type of information?
So they, at first, they're like, listen, man, the U.S. Attorney's Office is not a collections agency. They don't go do favors for their friends. If they brought a horribly weak case to try to bolster an insurance policy, that would be unheard of. And that's a wild connection, but we need to understand the facts. The problem was the more they understood the facts, I mean, one of them told me months later, I kind of laid it all out for him again. And he said, I got to camp out on this. And another one who's defended in federal court for 30 years in this city said, this is making the hair on my arm stand up. And they're having these conversations with Dilbeck and with Agent Busick. And the demeanor's weird. The comments are weird. Everyone's just getting creeped out because nothing in it reminds anyone of any prosecution they've ever been a part of.
So and I don't know if this is around the same time, but you're in Vegas at this trade show.
Well, yeah. So we're trying to meet, my guys are trying to meet with Dilbeck to get him to understand and go through these accounts one by one. And I mean, it's so crazy, Brent. A friend of mine, and I'm going to give him a shout out here, Brian. Brian was a good enough friend. He went with me and we dug up rock samples from some of our projects because Dilbeck was taking the position that we had charged a rock adder and there wasn't really rock. And he, as an AUSA, was really interested in understanding if we truly dug in rock or not.
Okay.
So just imagine my friend and I, my friend from my community group at church, going out on a Sunday with shovels to a job site that neither of us had ever been to.
Yeah.
And we're literally coming in with Ziploc bags full of rock samples. Now, my attorney told me I wasn't allowed to call them boulders because apparently boulder is a slang word for a large volume of cocaine.
Oh, okay.
So don't walk into your attorney's office saying you got boulders.
All right.
You got to walk in and say, I've got
big
rock
rock
samples. I've got big rock samples. And so we're just trying to shrink this thing. We're talking about it like it's a tumor that we're trying to shrink with the facts. And he's just not movable even on the fringes. And so it just is really obvious to everyone. We're just going to have to go try this case. We're not going to get there's just no sense here.
They're just not going to change their mind.
No. And I mean, and listen, we're getting these 302s, which if you guys, anyway, listening, a 302 is where the FBI basically summarizes conversations that they've had.
I want to talk about 302 real quick because a lot of people don't know what a 302 is. So a 302 is when somebody does an interview with somebody. Here's the interesting thing. And this is one of those things that could change things like overnight. We have so many different ways to record. I mean, our phones record, anything, like these little gadgets, anything records. One thing that the FBI doesn't do is they don't record their conversation with you and they write it down from their summary of their notes. Why would that be? Well, there's one reason why that would be is that they can actually charge that person for lying to the FBI, but there's no proof from the person who got recorded because it never got recorded. Those are summaries of their notes and memory. And if we just made one change that an FBI agent had to record their interview with the witness, wow, wouldn't that be big?
Well, then you'd get to hear what they actually had to say.
Right.
And not
a summary.
FBI agent writing
a narrative.
What he wishes they had said.
A narrative of what his thoughts were about that witness.
Well, in my case, the FBI interviewed a witness, and the FBI was unequivocal that I drove the witness down a specific street on a specific day in January of 2023 in a Tesla Cybertruck. That vehicle did not exist to anyone. It was not even on the market for another year. So just imagine you're getting all these reports back.
Yeah, that's a bad
They're
detail.
telling you their best evidence is this contractor that says you never even contracted with him. And I've got pictures of my crews on the job sites. And they're telling, man, the jury's not going to appreciate this guy buying a Cybertruck, when his business is struggling. And they're describing a vehicle that wouldn't even exist for another year to
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I mean, the attorneys are like, man, I'm starting to doubt, is this prosecutor very intelligent? Is he very sharp? Is he bright? Even this agent, they're like, normally these agents and these prosecutors, they're just impressive. They're impressive. They figure stuff out. They tell you what you did, where you did it, when you did it. They dotted their I's and crossed their T's. And then in this case, it's just almost like the Keystone Cops have the keys to your freedom, and they are not taking it seriously. They're like, no one had ever seen behavior like this out of an AUSA, out of an agent until
Well,
they started
it's
reviewing
believable
this
because
case.
they ended up getting disqualified. At what point did you decide that, you know what, if I'm going to go forward with this and I'm going to grit down and go to trial? When did you decide that these attorneys weren't your attorneys and you were going to go get a real guy with swagger?
Huh. Well, to be fair, these guys had swagger. I'll give them that. And I do appreciate the work that they did early on in the case. But,
Well,
when
let me back up on that
sure,
because I know a lot of attorneys. There's a lot of attorneys that have swagger. There's very few attorneys that have swagger that think that they can beat a federal ASUA in a courtroom. There's a lot of guys that think they got swagger to be able to get you down to a year and a day or whatever. But the guys that have the elephant-sized balls that go into the courtroom because they win, that's a small few.
that is a small few. When 97% of federal cases plead out, being a shop that can and is ready and will actually go to trial is rare.
That's a different shop.
And I felt very fortunate to find one that wanted my case by scraping together every family resource I possibly could, I could afford. And when it was time to go to trial, I brought on some out-of-state counsel to turn the tables on the government.
Let's talk about how you did that because I think it's impressive how you found them. How'd you find them?
So one thing that I was doing throughout this whole time period was I got a Pacer Monitor subscription, and I was furiously reading. I mean, just every night.
Pacers is where all the cases are.
Pacer's where all the
Emotions.
cases are. Exactly. And they're buried. They're not easy to find. And I
Right.
mean, I'm searching by keywords. I'm just reading cases upon cases and within all through the system. And I mean, I'm tracking cases that my judge has on his docket. I'm tracking cases that this prosecutor is working. I'm tracking fraud cases all over the country and just keeping up with them. And so there's this big case out in Washington State, kind of a novel cryptocurrency case. And I'm reading the motions and the pleadings in this case. And I'm loving it. And I'm just like, this guy is impressive. Who on earth is writing this stuff? This guy is good. This guy's absolutely just putting the government on its constitutional burden. Who is this guy? And is there any way he'd ever consider getting involved in my case? So I sent him an email because his email was at the bottom of a motion in another case in another state.
And he jumps on board. You go down and see him, and he's in Nashville, right?
Yeah, so I hired a guy by the name of Alex Little. Now, at this time, I now know was working on the Chrisley pardon that kind of made him blow up in the media after I had engaged him.
Yeah. Well, he was also on the Nevin Shetty case, which was a big case.
He was on the Shetty case. That's actually where that's where I found him.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
know Nevin went through quite a story and journey of his own.
yes. And so I had engaged him, and he was very interested in all my binders and my exhibits. And I mean, I had built trial binders by this point. And so I flew out to Nashville, took PTO from work, and used my reward points to fly to Nashville and just stayed out there for a couple of days. We went through the evidence. We met the whole team, and it was like, all right, we're going to trial.
So how long does all that process take?
Well, so I was indicted in July of 2024. Then we had our first big round of meetings trying to kind of get the government to see this for what it was in like November timeframe. And then it's kind of starting to fall apart. We're not making progress in January and February. And we're getting discovery related to these insurance policies that really started to provide, in our minds, an explanation for all of this. And it just was obvious it wasn't going anywhere. In early spring. In March is when I hire those guys. It's right at the time that he announces he's going to issue a superseding indictment. And then what was to be the trial would have been 6 months later in September.
Okay. So then some stuff starts happening and you start getting the feeling that, hey, maybe something's going to big change. How does that come about?
So, I had an anonymous tipster that told me that Mackenzie Dillback was about to get a $100,000 a year raise as sponsored on the Oklahoma Board of Regents agenda by Joe Harris Jr. And this new title that even within athletics sounds like it's her role to interface between the athletic department and its stakeholders, including the administration of the university. And man, it just stunk. It just really, really stunk. Again, I'm not saying that was a quid
You got to
pro
remember,
quo.
this is the wife of the man who's the AUSA.
Yes, my
And the
prosecutor's
guy
wife.
that's Harris is the founder of the bank.
Yes. And we're having conversations. We're getting insurance policies. It's stinking to high heaven. And even the guys that were like, AUSAs don't do shady stuff like this, they're getting the same weird emails and weird vibes and just weird, just acting like a witness or a suspect more than acting like an AUSA that knows what you did, where you did it. It just was just completely atypical behavior and language. And so I'm at a work event that I was already scheduled to be at, happened to be there, and run into some guys, and we talk about going to breakfast, and we go to breakfast at this event, and it's calm and cordial, but I talked to these guys about my case, and I thought that they would have information about why a different witness would say we never contracted to do the work, but I had all this proof. Listen, I already had the proof. I didn't need that witness's testimony either way. I already had the proof. But I was trying to figure out, it seemed like if someone answered that this was like a contract dispute, that was undesirable because they've made, and we learned that they had filed a claim on their bank fidelity policy alleging fraud. Well, what do you know? Everyone they're calling is not saying contractual dispute. They're calling everyone, they're saying fraud.
Fraud, right.
And fraud is very different from a contract dispute.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, hey, it was somebody influencing this guy to say these things, because I don't understand why a person would say that, that my company had never even been engaged to do a project when in actuality we had, and there was like a mountain of proof about it, including emails with this witness. Why would they do that? Well, I explained my concerns about being railroaded by the Department of Justice. And it wasn't 4 hours later and my attorneys are calling me and they're like, hey, shut down the self-investigation, whatever. However, the fruit plate went at breakfast, it was not digested well. And I was sick at my stomach. Not from the fruit. The fruit was fine.
Yeah. So what happens next?
Well, yeah, so I get home and they're like, hey, AUSA Dillback wants you to agree not to talk to any witnesses about your case. Essentially like wants you to agree to a gag order. And it wasn't in my conditions of pretrial release, but he wanted to add it. And I said, okay, well, what happens if I don't? Like, what if we say no? He's like, well, we'll have to go argue in front of the judge. And I was like, well, listen, if Dillback wants to spin up this crazy narrative, including the fact that I tricked this guy into going to breakfast, but I have text messages where this guy suggests breakfast and sets the time and place. And I said, when are we going to start pushing back on these false narratives where Dillback chose me as a criminal, works backwards to select a crime, then works backwards to find the evidence, and only the evidence that supports the conclusions he's made. And they're like, Ryan, this is not the war you want to win. Let's just agree to it. And I said, well, what if I don't? And they said, Dilbeck's going to move to detain you, to put you in prison until your trial, if that's what it takes to silence you.
Mm-hmm. Not an unusual move, by the way. So what did you do?
I accepted the change in conditions, and in that same breath, he announced that he was going to take it from 1 count to 10 counts, that he'd be waiting for me with 7 years of sentencing exposure at trial. I could plead guilty, and he'd ask for 3 years. So the trial penalty was 4 years. And there was just no moving. There was just no movement. Everything we'd shown him, all it had done was
strengthen his resolve.
Strengthen his result. And what's crazy is the counts that he superseded with, we hadn't even discussed them yet. It was like, I just wonder, like, in his mind, we'd discussed half. We've discussed the first half of the alphabet. We didn't cherry pick. We discussed the first half of the alphabet. And at the end of it, he had not found one action that he could legitimately prosecute. So he just went and chose from the second half of the list.
He just got a superseding indictment, came up with some
So he just went and got a superseding indictment. And what's crazy too, I mean, I don't want to add to it, I don't want to pile on, but one of the creepiest emails we got from him, which again, my attorneys forward to me, I'm not communicating directly, but he makes a list of all the transactions. And he says, in his words, I've colored the non-fraudulent transactions red, and I've colored the fraudulent transactions green. And we were like, what? And I said, are you kidding me? The times that I committed 18 USC 1344 bank fraud are green? Who highlights the crime in green? He did. And he actually got asked about it. And this was telling too about how incompetent this FBI agent was. He said, well, I wanted to make it really easy for the FBI agent. Green means go investigate, and red means stop investigating. It's like, those are both horrible.
Well,
like, just imagine sitting on the other side of this and you're hearing this and you're like, is this a joke? Is this a joke? The only thing serious.
Just having fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ryan, how does it happen that this gets in front of the judge and the judge makes the ruling that the guy is disqualified?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'll fast forward through a lot of time here. We get ready for trial. We send out subpoenas. We subpoena 30 parties, and everyone gives us back all the evidence we have that these are real projects, real contracts, that there isn't fraud here. We get something back for everything. We don't have any unprotected,
We've closed every loop.
transactions.
Right.
We've closed every loop. And again, some of them, you had a ton with certain customers that generated a lot of documentation. It was a mix. We had an investigator that went out and met with witnesses and re-interviewed witnesses.
Okay.
That the FBI was saying, well, this witness says this, and then our private investigators like, no, they're actually saying this, and it's like the opposite. We do forensics. We are just absolutely preparing for trial, aggressively filing pre-trial motions, and finally, we decide that there's no way for me to defend against the witness tampering charge without bringing in Joe Harris Jr., the president of the University of Oklahoma, with a trial subpoena. And let me tell you, that's wild. That's wild when you've got a private investigator getting on a flight and he's going to come hang out in Norman, Oklahoma until he can serve the university president with a trial subpoena.
On a football field.
The season was starting, and we're like, we'll find him somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly because the bank's attorneys were willing to take service for everyone else from the bank except for Joe Harris. However, they spoiled the drama, and like at midnight one night, as we're preparing to go serve him in person, the bank reversed course and said, no, we'll take trial subpoena service for Joe Harris Jr.
So then how does that ending up knowing that he's in the mix of all this in the courtroom with the judge with a disqualification.
Yeah, so after that, and again, it's so dense, but there's just so many bad faith conversations, emails where my attorneys really began to view this assistant United States attorney as dangerous, as unethical, as bad faith. And it's just in everything. It's in representations he's making to them. It's in his responses to pretrial motions. And just kind of this fear sets in that this guy is so bought in, he would literally trick a jury, like resort to trickery if that's what it took to convict me. And he's moving all over the place on theories. He's not agreeing to, he's not upholding any kind of mutual understandings. He's just, it's like very slippery. And so they said, Ryan, I just, all of this that's come out, all the discovery we've gotten back, because again, the judge actually made a comment in one of his briefs that he wishes he had known about this sooner, but it was like the totality of evidence had just built. It was kind of like there was a little bit there to start with.
Yeah.
And it's just growing. And I mean, we're finding Instagram photos where Dilbeck is drinking Moscow mules with his next door neighbor, another Valiance board member. And it's just like this never ending
web.
It just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah.
And they're asking and challenging him about this stuff. And he's not consulting with the advisory office within the Department of Justice. So he's not taking all these steps. He's not, the court doesn't know about, like,
do your attorneys actually file a motion to have him disqualified?
That's where it lands. So we finally file a motion to disqualify Assistant United States Attorney D.H. Dilbeck because of the relationships with Joe Harris and with another board member, Blair Humphreys, his former next door neighbor.
Okay. And how long does it take for this motion, and it's filed, to you get a response positive from the judge that disqualifies an AUSA prosecutor?
So pretty quickly, the government responded, and it was, oh, how dare you?
Right. Why would you ever say
the nerve?
That? Yeah.
And then what surprised us was I was in Nashville preparing for trial to testify in my own case. And the judge ordered us to respond. It's kind of weird because normally, the judge just kind of lets you kind of volley it back and forth and then he makes a decision. And so we responded, and then we showed up in court for a scheduling hearing. And that's when the judge heard evidence, if you will, from both sides about the conflict motion.
Okay. So he rules and disqualifies the AUSA. Is there any, is it just a matter of fact ruling, or does he give descriptive words of why he's done this?
So the ruling did not come out until the next day.
Okay.
If I remember, he didn't
After
rule
the
on
arguments. Okay.
They heard arguments. Dilbeck, and again, this is in the public record, so this isn't an accusation. This is what happened. Initially indicated he didn't even know one of these board members. And then we pulled out the Instagram photos, and then all of a sudden he did. The criminal supervisor, Jessica Perry, for this area was screaming the F-bomb at my attorneys and at her attorney's table after Judge Bernard Jones walked out. I could hear her slamming doors and screaming, going down the hallway.
Not happy.
This hearing had gone so badly and so embarrassingly. And I'm just sitting there in the crowd, just like doing like that baby Yoda, just like, What is going on here?
Yeah.
And so he issues the ruling, and sometimes judges issue an order and an opinion where they really go into all the things. He just issued an order that kind of just recapped all the stuff that we presented. And
what did you think? What did you think? This is like something that doesn't happen. What was going through your mind?
So I would get the filings about.
Were you immediately thinking that possibly this could mean that they're going to just dismiss the case?
No.
Okay.
No. So my attorney, I'd get the filings about a minute after they would. And I get this phone call from my attorney, and not Alex, Ted, who really, and he was the one that was doing all the writing. Like Ted was doing 90% of the day-to-day work was Ted, and he's freaking brilliant. And I get this phone call, and I mean, it's like Ted can't even get the words out. What? And then, it comes through, and we were shocked. We were shocked because even the judge was like, he said, as a judge, I want to follow precedent. I don't want to set precedent, but I will. This is very disturbing.
Wow. Okay, so you get a new case, or not a new case, you get a new prosecutor. Then how long is this new prosecutor on the case to your attorneys talking back and forth with this new prosecutor that it appears that this is not going to be the same vigor and umph that Dillback had?
Yeah, so we get a new prosecutor. If you're listening, Danielle London, I'd like to give you a shout out. I know it could not have been easy. I know that the office politics must have made it very difficult to walk this back, but thank you that you did. It was the right thing. But yeah, Danielle London is on the case. She's experienced, she's bright, she's typical AUSA. And I mean, just right out of the gate, she and my attorney are just having quality, normal, everyone lives on planet Earth.
Right.
In all the conversations with Danielle London. It's rational. Right. She's not giving in. She's not like whatever you want, but we finally can have like a rational adult deconflicted conversation about just the facts. Because like once Dillback's gone, it's like that chapter is over. Now
how
it's
long
just
does
us
it
and the
take
facts.
for Dillback to be gone to where you get your attorneys noticed that they're going to work out a deal where they are going to dismiss all the charges and have some kind of supervision thing? How long did all that take?
Yeah, so we still were ready and wanted to try the case quickly, but just scheduling, it was like it was going to be October, then November, and then Alex
Meaning
had to
for
go
the
try
case.
for the trial.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, for the trial.
Alex had to go try another trial. Guy's got a busy schedule, but and so it turns out that the trial is going to be start the week after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And so that's locked in. And then in early October, I think it was, Danielle London reached out to my attorneys with just kind of this like, can we talk about why there have been no plea discussions in this case? Like what? Yeah, just kind of this real kind of open-handed.
Yeah, this soft openings.
Can we just talk like grown-ups? And so they have some conversations with her, and there's kind of some ground rules laid that everybody feels good about. So Ted and Alex came to Oklahoma City in mid-October, met with another AUSA that's very experienced, and just laid out all the evidence. I literally tried our case in front of two prosecutors.
So do they make a deal there, or is something happen after that?
Well, we left, I took Alex and Ted back to the airport. We had Chick-fil-A and weighed the likelihood that they would dismiss it. We considered that they probably should dismiss it, but there was an option, kind of a conditional dismissal option that they had talked about that they thought that had merit to it. And they did typical lawyer stuff. They said it was a better than 50% chance that they had succeeded, and I dropped them off and they took off for Nashville.
Wow. So how do you find out? How do you find out that this is all after 18 months of a nightmare, and your family, your kids, everybody's lived through this, the press? How does the news come to you?
So there's 3 weeks of silence, and just dead silence. And they're like, hey, we just need to stay put. We don't need to ask for an update. Let's just stay put. And then on a Friday morning in November, I get a phone call from Ted, and he says, hold on, I'm circling in Alex, and I'm with my wife. We're, at home alone, and they debate who gets to tell me, and Alex says, hey, it's over. They're going to dismiss they're going to dismiss all the charges. There's going to be this diversion that's set up that's, it's going to show dismissed on your record. It's over. The underlying charges that are dismissed. For 18 months, you're going to have to do what you've done this whole time, which is have a job and not break the law.
Yeah. Kind of like a supervision to 18
Kind of
months.
like a
Yeah.
supervision. And,
A way for them to walk out with saying that they didn't give up everything.
it was like, yeah,
But they dismissed all the charges. So you and your wife were sitting there. I think you've told me you were numb. What was your wife's reaction?
just crying.
Yeah. Had to just be a total, like, just you're fighting, and then boom.
Just emotional vomit.
Yeah.
Just imagine your stomach is just full of every emotion and it all just kind of comes out all at once.
So what do you think, Ryan, about if you were talking to somebody that recently got indicted and like you already threw up that 97% people that are indicted plea, there's a lot of attorneys out there that said, just give it a chance. Don't fold immediately. Because you get with an attorney that is used to making deals because they do it almost all the time. What would you tell somebody about, because you've experienced all of this?
I would say that if you have a plausible defense strategy, whatever that looks like, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't
Right.
make plausible defense strategies.
What,
If you have a
believe
plausible
you believe that what has happened to you has been wrong.
and you have something to stand on,
Right. You have facts.
you have facts to stand on, you have, some viable way to challenge any of the 5 elements of whatever fraud they're coming at you with, then you have got to go get a trial attorney team. You have got to go hire someone who
The guys
runs
that aren't
these
afraid
trials.
to walk in. Right.
And they're not afraid to travel. They
Right.
try cases all over the country.
Right. They're
You've
just
gotta have, like,
badasses that go into federal courtrooms.
You gotta have, they come in and it's Latin. It's called pro hoc vice. I call them pro hawks. They got to swoop in. You got to get some pro hawks that will swoop in and will zealously fight for you and put you in a position for an acquittal. Because we believed that I would be acquitted. We also feared that if my restless leg syndrome made me look nervous, some juror might not.
What would the juror think? Yeah.
What would a juror think?
And that's the whole thing. I mean, they're good enough at stacking charges that can, some of them carry 10 years, some carry 20 years, and you can stack them. And they can go 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 200 years. So you have to have this just built in, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway, and with the right team. But the reason I wanted you to tell your story and what you had to do, it wasn't easy. There was nothing easy that happened. I mean, your family went through hell. Your kids saw stuff that they shouldn't have seen. But you stayed up,
Sold our house to pay lawyers.
sold your house to pay lawyers. You stayed up night after night after night researching stuff that you would have never researched in your whole life, but you were fighting for yourself and your family. So there's nothing easy about it, but you did the work to get the right people in play to be in a place where you could actually file these motions to where a judge could hear it. It would scare off the U.S. Attorney's Office to the point where they said, "Hey, what are we doing? Let's talk about this." So it's just an incredible story, Ryan, and fortitude, persistence, courage, grit. I just love it, and it's one that I hope a lot of people listen to. That, for the people who've already gone through this, it just makes you feel good that somebody did it. For the people that are getting ready to go into it, man, do the work. And if you've got the elephant side gonads to go into it, make sure you got the right team. But if I was going to ask you, Ryan, what your biggest takeaway is through all this, what do you think you'd say?
I would say that my biggest focus in the aftermath of all of this is just doing business, doing life, surrounding myself at work and at home with high quality men and women of integrity, because the non-paying customers that caused me to go bankrupt in the first place, I'd been warned that they were slimy. And I thought, well, I'm not slimy and I'm going to have my I's dotted and my T's crossed. And if they try to get out of what they owe me, I'm going to have I'm going to have everything on my side. I look back at, I dealt with this banker for a long time, dealt with this bank, and, he just was unreliable, just didn't really always follow through on these things. And so I thought, shame on me to think that that you know that there that you can work with unreliable, slimy people, and you can think that they're going to hold up what's right and do what's right when the chips are down for you. And I had this like naivety about me that I thought if I did the right thing, told the truth, that it would work out for me. And then I realize I'm the one painted a criminal. I'm the one painted a bad guy. And maybe the real bad guys, have to face consequences for lying to the FBI. Maybe they don't. But I just look at like this company I'm with now that, and I don't just respect that they stuck with me. I just respect that they do business right and they do right by people, even when it's inconvenient to them, even when it costs them money. And I'm just obsessed now with just trying to surround myself with like-minded folks that want to do it right and just running in the opposite direction of anything that even smells creative, smells like self-help, smells shady. I'm just get me out of there. Just get me out of there. If you fly up here and the decisions you make, they won't be able to pull you down, here like they can when you're flying closer to the ground.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great takeaway. Don't swim with the wrong people because you can get it on you. And and uh and you're with a great company, and thank God they stuck with you and gave you the opportunity. And what a reward they got out of that. What a great situation for somebody to say, listen, innocent until proven guilty. We're going to stick with you and see you through this because they had, there was fire all around. So I think it's
Well,
a great.
and I want to
Go ahead.
add too, our department at work has taken off. We're growing, we're expanding. Like it's incredible that their patience with me in return, we built successful, profitable projects all through that time period, built up customers. It's like
Yeah, it's good for both sides.
my other takeaway too would just be if you're out there and someone in your life that you have any decision making over, finds themselves down the barrel of this, like use some judgment, listen to it. And just, I mean, how incredible for both of us that they're able to, I'm able to build value for them. And then they also protected and were everything to me when I needed it.
Yeah, they
It's
valued
amazing.
you. It's fantastic, and I love it. Love it for those guys out there that take a chance and give people that are in this situation, in the soup like you were, or when they get out and go into reentry and give somebody a chance because they're really looking for one and find there's been all kinds of articles written about the fact that these people desperately want jobs and they're going to be more loyal percentage wise than just the regular person. So remember that if you're starting a business or you got a business that's looking for people. Talking about gratitude, I want to give a shout out to Homestead Financial, who lets me use this podcast studio with all the fancy cameras and lights. I appreciate it. If anybody has home mortgage needs out there, Greg Aftiev is your guy. He knows all that stuff. Hey, if you're looking for a book out there, I got one. Check it out on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. It's Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, and Finally Breaking Free. Got time? Leave me a review on Apple. That just love it. Love reading that stuff. Helps the show. And if you want to know what I'm doing, go to brentcassity.com. I spell it wrong. Spell it with a TY, not a DY. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. And this was a great episode that's a little bit different than our normal episodes. And I like that because this gives some people out there hope that, hey, I stick to it. If I've got the facts in my favor, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to fight. And man, you fought and won. What a great story. What a great story, man. Thanks for sharing it.
Well, thanks for having me on.
All right, folks. Nightmare Success in and out.